Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Deborah, and today I wanted to jump right into talking about 5 things that helped me have an unmedicated birth. I'm currently pregnant with my 3rd baby. I've had 2 unmedicated births, 2 of them being home births, and obviously right now in this time of my life, birth is literally at the forefront of my mind. And I wanted to talk about 5 things that helped me, and maybe they can help you. But first, before we get right into it, I'm so glad that you're here and that you found this video. And before we get started, could you do me a favor and like and subscribe to this channel, and let's get right into it. One of the first things I will say that really helped me have an unmedicated birth or births was research. The first thing that kind of brought me on that path of unmedicated birth was when I saw my eldest sister give birth for the first time, and just saw intervention after intervention after intervention, and that just kind of led to a cascade of events that kind of led to her having a C-section. And obviously you can never tell how birth is going to play out, but to me, just doing research on kind of what your options are played a huge part in my decision making when it came time for me to have a baby. And also learning about, specifically in my situation, Black women and kind of the mortality rate for Black women. I just really wanted to make sure that I set myself up for success, especially as a Black mother. And so what I kind of did was really take a lot of time to research what my options were, and kind of, if I can avoid interventions, it might have a better outcome for me as a mother giving birth. And another thing was listening to other women's experiences. In my case, it was listening to Black women or even women who did unmedicated births, and what that did for them in their lives, and how that played out in postpartum, how that played out in the rest of their motherhood journey. Obviously, everyone has a different experience. I just want to put that out there. Not everyone's going to be able to have an unmedicated birth, and that's okay. But this is just kind of what helped me and kind of what set me on this path of having an unmedicated birth. The second thing I will say that helped me have an unmedicated birth was taking a birth class. And in my case, I took the Bradley method. It's like the kind of, I think, husband coached or kind of coached way of giving birth. I think that's what it is. It's been kind of quite a while since I took the class, but there's thousands of classes out there that can help prepare you for birth. And I think one of the biggest things that you can do if you are trying to have an unmedicated birth is to really learn the ins and outs of birth. Whether you take a birth class or you just do research on your own, but learning the ins and outs of birth will really kind of help focus your mind and realize kind of when you're going through different stages of labor, not everything is an immediate emergency. And if you really don't know, so I mean, this may not happen, this may not be the case for everyone, but if you're giving birth and you really don't know what's going on, you may think that what's happening to you is an emergency or something that might call for you to need more help. And it may not, it might just be really intense contractions, or kind of the baby shifting, or anything like that, or maybe the baby is malpositioned, and there's ways to fix that without interventions. Another thing is really learning what's happening with your body. I learned a lot of that when I took a birth class. They really taught me how I'm going through different stages in labor, how to recognize whether or not you're in the first stage of labor, or if you're in really early labor, how to recognize when you're in active labor, how to recognize when you are going through transition, which once you hit transition can be the part where women will kind of scream out or blurt out or really just say, I can't do this anymore, or I want the drugs, give me all the drugs, or kind of just, I want to give me a C-section, or kind of just put me out of my misery. Literally, transition is really the time where you'll probably have the most intense contractions, and you might feel like you're done and you can't do it any longer. But one thing you'll know, or if you take birth classes or recognize, or even do the research, you'll learn that that time is short, and that means you're close to the end. You are going to see that finish line. You are going to see that baby really soon. And birth class really helped me recognize that when I was in labor with both of my kids. Although sometimes you do forget in labor, but you kind of recognize that it's not an emergency and you can get through it. I would say the third thing that helped me have an unmedicated birth was learning breathing or coping techniques. Learning techniques, I think, is really key when you are trying to have an unmedicated birth. Techniques will really help you cope. It'll help you kind of get through those contractions. Some contractions can be, as short as 15 seconds, as long as maybe 2 minutes. With my first birth, I was having really intense contractions, and they felt like they were lasting about like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and they were intense. One of the most intense pains I've ever felt in my life, and one of the things that really got me through it was breathing through it and learning how to properly breathe through contractions to kind of help you get through them. Learning different coping techniques, whether or not you have a support person or a doula. Getting a doula is also very helpful. I didn't have a doula with either of my births, but having a doula can help you. They can help you or teach you on how to have coping techniques through labor. And one thing I think might be a little bit unwise is to kind of want to jump into unmedicated birth without having any type of research or even kind of knowing what you can do to help you get through that pain, especially if you might be a first-time mom, because if you're a first-time mom, birth kind of might just be in theory. You really don't know what's going to happen. You hear about it, you watch videos, but you really don't know what it's going to feel like until you've actually gone through it at least once. And so kind of jumping into it like unmedicated birth can kind of be really jarring. And I think having techniques that can help you cope through them, I know that in Bradley method, there's certain position that you can put yourself into that can really help your body completely relax and kind of lessen the pain. Because when your body is relaxed through somewhat, as much as you can, relax through contractions, it can make the contractions feel a lot less painful. It can also make the contractions not feel as intense. And having techniques like that you've learned can really, really, really help you in labor. When you're going through labor, you can kind of feel like you're a little bit in la la land, especially if you're going through intense contractions, and having techniques, or even having your support person know what these techniques are, they can help you instantly snap into them. Having those techniques can really, really just help you get through that moment, because if anyone who's gone through contractions or even in labor, you will know that like it's really hard to cope sometimes if you're going through labor, whether it is for 5 hours or even 12, 24, 48 hours. It can really be hard to keep your mind clear on what your end goal is of having an unmedicated labor if you don't have any coping techniques. Or if you kind of if you're worn down, you might just kind of be like, okay, I'm done with this. I just want to get, an epidural. I just want to kind of just do whatever it takes to get the baby out. So having coping techniques can really, really help. And if you do a simple Google search or even research in if you take birth classes or even having a doula, you can learn so many different techniques that can help you with each labor. What helped me the first time around didn't really work the second time around, because again, each labor and birth is so different. So learning different techniques, even brushing up on those methods every single time you're pregnant can really, really be helpful. I would say the fourth thing that helped me have an unmedicated birth was the freedom of movement. Now, sometimes if you're in the hospital, you can have freedom of movement. I think depending on like kind of if you have a free IV or something, or I forget what it's called, some kind of IV that allows you to have some movement. And I'm not sure how it works with epidurals, but if your goal is to have an unmedicated labor, I would say having the freedom of movement is super key. If you are laying in bed kind of enduring those contractions, it sometimes may not be helpful for you to kind of speed things along or move things along. Having the freedom of movement, shifting your hips can really help the baby move to where they need to go. If they're not positioned correctly, can really help put that baby into the right position, which can help move along labor if your goal is to kind of speed through this. Another thing is that it definitely can shorten labor if you are able to move into different positions throughout your labor. Whether or not you're on a yoga ball, you're using the peanut, or you're kind of dancing. Having the freedom of movement can really, really help. I know with my second birth, I moved a lot in my second birth, but one thing I didn't do or recognize, I was having intense back labor. One thing that I didn't remember was doing the mile circuit. Doing the mile circuit could have really helped shift the baby and kind of I did have a pretty fast labor. It was about 4.5 hours, but doing the mile circuit could probably put the baby in a better position where it would had back labor, and I would have kind of sped it a lot faster if I had kind of done the mile circuit or even shifted more into different positions. It could have really helped, but I didn't do that. And so there's that tip. Make sure if you're trying to do unmedicated labor, do have freedom of movement. Research different positions that you can do, research different coping techniques and different things that you can do and have your support person help you do while you're in labor. And lastly, I would say the fifth thing that really, really helped me have an unmedicated labor was finding the right care provider and having the right support person. Having the right care provider will really, 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 really help you have an unmedicated birth. Whether you're doing an OBGYN in the hospital, or having a certified nurse midwife in a birth center, or having a home birth with a midwife at home, or having a doula help you, having your partner help you, or friend, or whatever it is. Having the right person and care provider can really help you have an unmedicated birth. If you are not on the same page especially with your care provider, if you're having it in a hospital setting and you maybe even don't communicate your birth plan, or if you do communicate your birth plan as having an unmedicated, your goal is to have an unmedicated labor, but your care provider is just kind of like winking at you like, well, sure. Especially with first-time moms, they'll just kind of, sometimes they might brush you off when you say you want to have an unmedicated birth. They're like, okay, well, we'll listen to that. But really getting on the same page as your medical provider, and letting them know that this is what you really want, barring any kind of, circumstances that might, pop up that you need to have, any type of medication or interventions. Your goal is to really have an unmedicated birth. And once they understand that, really encourage you to get through it if that's your goal. And I would say having a doula, especially if you might do a hospital birth, having a doula there might be really helpful, because they can kind of keep your focus on what you're wanting, what your birth goal is, and they can kind of, if you have other staff there that might have just be kind of offering, because that can happen. If someone's offering you something in a moment of weakness or you're vulnerable, you might just want to take it, even if that wasn't your goal. And having a doula there might kind of help you kind of advocate for yourself, support for yourself, or even being that extra voice of reason, saying, what your goal is, let's keep it in mind, kind of let's push it off for another hour, let's push it off for another 30 minutes. And that can really help you achieve that goal of having an unmedicated labor. Having a great support person there, who's another person that'll be in your ear telling you, you can do it, you can do it, you can do anything for 60 seconds, you can do anything for a minute, you can do anything for a couple of seconds, or anything like that, or really trying to like hold your hips together when you're having a contraction, or even getting you a wet towel on your hand. Having the right support person or having the right care provider can really change a situation, and help you achieve your goal of having an unmedicated birth. With my experience, I've had two home births and 2 midwives. They were both obviously super supportive of having a home birth. And then in one situation, in my second birth, because my first birth, I can link the story below of me talking about my first birth. It was an unassisted home birth, and that was accidental. My labor happened to be super quick, so my midwife didn't make it to the birth. So that one I actually went through it myself, and that was a crazy experience, but go watch it if you missed it. The second time around, my midwife was there, and she helped me really think, or I think that this was a birth experience where I kind of felt super lost. And she kept putting me in perspective of, you know what you're doing, you've been through it before. Every birth is different. And she kept reminding me of that, because I kept holding on to the fact that this birth was so different from my first. And I think it kept holding me back from kind of moving forward and kind of removing those mental blocks. And having a good care provider who kind of supports you and kind of pushes you in that sense can really help change your perspective, change your mindset onto what your goal is. And my husband was also there, and he was such a good support person. He was also reminding me, cheering me on. I had my twin sister there cheering me on, getting me whatever I needed to help me achieve that goal. And so those are the 5 things I would say have really helped me have an unmedicated labor. As I continue to go through this pregnancy that I'm going through, my 3rd pregnancy, I do plan to make more content on kind of preparing for home birth, what kind of different techniques that I've used. And if you're really interested in that, please let me know below. Comment and let me know what your thoughts are. I'd also love to know what helped you get through an unmedicated birth. I'm going through it again. I'm going to be going through it again soon, and I would love to have some new tips, because things that I learned 3 years ago might not be applicable to me today, or as I approach a new labor. So please let me know what your thoughts are on below and what helped you, because it might help me. And I just want this to be a community where we can just help each other, share with each other, share knowledge. And if you like this content, please, if you wouldn't mind doing a like and subscribing below. It really helps my channel grow, and it really grows a community where we can just be supportive of each other and our choices on how we have babies. I hope to see you guys again soon, and thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again. Bye.